talk about some stuff that is of utmost importance. It's about expectations and reality. And Alex Hormozi, you know that guy, I suppose, a businessman actually, and has a very sound logic, firmly grasped, as we will now see, some very deep notion. Let's see what it is. First, a statistic about human beings, in particular podcasts, and then we are going to see the explanation or the way we should make sense of that statistic. Here we go.
I use this stat all the time. 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3. And of the 90%, the 10% that do, 90% don't make it past episode 20. So by making 21 podcasts, you are in the top percentile of all podcasters ever in history. That's what hard feels like. And that's not even hard. It's just consistent. Fuck me. It's less than half a year.
Yeah. Now, it is quite funny. Is a statistics, but it shows something about human beings and how they operate in the world. Not only how they behave, but also how they conceive, what sort of expectations they have in relation to stuff, right? When someone starts a podcast, it is not as follows. All of a sudden a thought pops up, let me do a podcast today. No, it is not how things go. It is rather as follows. You start thinking about it. You talk to a friend perhaps. You have this inner goings on, and then you decide to do it. Even with that process, after which you decide to do it, you decide to act, either individually or with some couple of other people, friends. You start doing it after such a decision process, consideration and decision, and then you start doing it. Still, this is the weird thing. 90% of those who start in that way stop doing before the 4th episode of their podcast. That's quite weird. And of those 10%, 90 still stop doing it before episode 21, which means, Jesus Christ, 99% of all people who decide to make podcast stop doing it before the 21st episode of their podcast. What does that real striking statistic mean? What does that mean? I mean, that's really baffling, right? How are we supposed to make sense of that weird observation, that weird result? Well, let's see what Alex says, which will enable us to make sense, to make right, correct sense of that appearance, that weird, shocking fact.
People think that it will be easier than it is. And if you have a fundamental belief that you will fail in order to succeed and that it will be hard, and that is why most people don't do it, like if you actually believe that, then what happens is expectations match reality. And then you don't have anxiety about your quote failure, because it's not a failure, because it's meeting reality. And so it's just that I think most people are deluded. Most people are just delusional.
Good. Let's hear that essential part again where he speaks about expectations meeting reality.
Then what happens is expectations match reality. And then you don't have anxiety about your quote failure, because it's not a failure, because it's meeting reality.
Good. What is a failure and what is meeting reality? Now, the weird thing is, only 1% of all those people who start podcasts, only 1% make it past 20th episode. What does that mean? That means that people had expectations that didn't match the reality of such processes, right? Let us first ask the question, why did those people stop doing it? Why did those people who started stop doing it after a certain point? What was the reason? What is the most prevalent reason among those who started, the reason for them to stop? And the answer is the following. People think that they could achieve their purpose, whatever it is, we will come to it, but they can achieve their purpose by doing that thing for about 10 times. So they wanted to start a podcast thing. They started doing it, first episode, second episode, third, and so forth. But they stopped at one point because they did perceive or must have perceived or thought that this is going nowhere. Where is that supposed to go somewhere? Yes, of course it is supposed to go somewhere. If you want to and decide to do podcasts, start producing podcasts, then you have a particular purpose, which is other than simply producing podcasts. You want to reach to people, probably create an audience and something of that sort. But you aim something by means of creating podcasts. which is to probably reach people, right? Have an audience who are interested in it. So that means that since they stop at one point, they must have thought at that point, prior to that point, that they failed to reach their purpose or aim by doing that thing up until that moment. And not only they failed, but also they couldn't see that they would realize that purpose, aim in the foreseeable future by doing that which they have been doing for, say, 7 times. So they made 7 episodes, and the 8th one they stopped. Why? Well, they said to themselves, this is not working. We are not going anywhere. I mean, if we do this, not only we haven't gone anywhere with this, but also if we keep doing this, we are not going anywhere. Now, what does that likely believe, which we inferred from the fact that they stopped doing it, what does that belief tell us? That belief proves the fact that they had some type of expectation, a particular kind of expectation for the process, which really didn't match the reality, the logic of those processes. What is it? Well, if you want to make podcasts and if you want to succeed in that business, which probably means like create an audience, right? Sizable audience. I don't know, whatever it is. Start building a community or an audience. Then, if you think you are gonna be able to do it, I don't know, by the 10th or 19th episode, then you are deluded. As Alex Hormozi says, you are really deluded about the reality, the logic of such processes. It doesn't work like that. But you had that expectation that is proven by the fact that you decided to stop thinking it is not working, which means you had the expectation that it would work until that point. Then you stopped. You misinterpreted what was going on at that stage as failure because you thought you would succeed at that stage with that kind of result. Having failed to see those results, which you thought possible and likely in that process at that stage, you said, nah, we failed. And you stopped. They stopped. But the fact is, that is totally logical. The logic of such processes, which is to say the nature of such processes, requires repetition. And it is far beyond 20. But 99% of all the people who decided to try and it tried. See? I mean, some part of it had some other type of reason to stop and so forth. But at least 90% of people who started we can safely assume, did have that kind of weird expectation about the process. It was only the first phase of the process where it was inevitable, perfectly natural and inevitable and totally okay. The only possible option actually, it is contrary was not possible indeed. It's not even possible. So if you try to do something during the first phase of it, you are gonna not make it. You will simply do what you're supposed to do with no apparent result. That is inevitable. That is what you would expect if you were realistic about the nature of the process. That is the first phase of the process, and that's what you are gonna get. Don't expect anything else. And if you don't expect anything else from the process, then you don't stop. Why? Because you just produced the 20th episode of your podcast and you are like, oh Jesus, 50 people in total. What is it? You don't say that. If you're realistic, if your expectation about the process, having noticed the logic of such processes, the nature of their first phase, then you would have that expectation. You would say, this is perfectly natural. Only the 20th episode. You wouldn't stop with that, right? But if you have expectations that do not match reality, then you would stop. As 99% did prior to the 21st episode. That tells us something strong about how people's conception and thinking and action about the world and in the world, how those things operate and function. We don't simply want to understand things, whatever that means. We want to apply these notions which we observe through other people's thinking and behavior, through such statistics. We want to apply this observation and consideration. We want to apply it to our own lives. Keep that in mind. Thanks, Alex.